Here in Newark, we've seen a lot of flooding over the last few days. On Friday, I travelled from one end of the constituency to the other, looking at the impact of flooding and seeing the damage that was caused. And that's been extensive. Houses flooded, fields flooded, so crops no longer available to be picked. We can't go on like this. Flooding is a more and more common problem, and we need to deal with it. We need to deal with it properly. And I'm speaking here from personal experience. I'm filming this video in the study in my own house, and we were flooded 6 years ago, in fact 6 years ago this week, and this room that I'm sat in was underwater. It's a horrible, horrible experience. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Seeing your home damaged or destroyed, not being able to live in the house that you've lived in, that is your family home, and seeing so many of your belongings piled in a skip because they've been destroyed in the floods is awful. Nobody should have to go through that. And so I'm calling on all parties to invest in flooding, to make sure that we deal with the issues that causes. I'm delighted that the Liberal Democrats have committed £5 billion to tackling flooding, and that will go to address 3 issues. Firstly, we need to make sure that we have proper flood defences in place to protect existing communities, making sure that floodwaters go where we want them to go, away from buildings, away from built up areas. So that's number 1. Some work on that has already been done, but not enough. The government pledged loads of money after floods earlier this decade, and a huge amount of that has never reached the schemes it was intended to fund. That can't be acceptable. We have to stop that happening and make sure that people get the funding that they need, that organisations, that local communities get the funding they need to invest in flood defences. Secondly, we need to make sure our existing watercourses work, and that means making sure that drains and ditches are kept clear. There's been a huge cutback in recent years on things like ditch clearing because it's expensive and nobody could see an immediate benefit to it. But the benefit is in making sure that those schemes, that those ditches can move the water away, and that's what they should be doing. Cutting back there is a false economy because it leads to flooding. It's not the only cause of flooding by any means, but it is one of the factors, and it's one that we can address. And thirdly, we need to make sure that flooding and flooding risks are properly considered in the planning system for when we're building new houses. You can't just say planning rules are a blockage and we're going to get rid of them, because that then leads to a free-for-all. What we need to do is have proper, effective planning rules so that when we're building new houses, we think about the impact that they will have. Where will the water from those houses go? And if we're building, as so often has been the case recently, in areas that have been floodplain, how do we make sure that those properties don't flood in the future? And if that's on land that once upon a time would have taken water, where's that water going to go now? So these are all issues that need to be addressed by any politicians who are facing up to flooding. I'm calling on the government to declare a national emergency over the current flooding problems. The Conservatives have said it's not a national emergency. I may be cynical, but I can't help thinking that if this was in Boris Johnson's community, in the constituency that he represents, then they'd have declared an emergency straight away. Declaring a national emergency means that we can unlock national funds to help, and also that we can bring in EU funds, because the EU have funds available for where there have been natural disasters, and flooding is a natural disaster. We only need to ask. And for all those people who've been flooded and aren't getting the help and the support that they need, it is no comfort whatsoever to know that the government's failure to bring in resources has been purely a political choice, letting dogma get in the way of common sense and supporting the population. Boris Johnson eventually came to visit some flood-hit areas several days after the flooding occurred. He offered £500 per family. Frankly, that's an insult. £500 goes nowhere towards repairing damaged houses. It goes nowhere towards replacing destroyed belongings, destroyed possessions, and it goes nowhere to helping in terms of flood defences. We need proper funding, proper solutions, and we need a government and MPs that take this seriously. I'm committed to doing that. I'm committed to dealing with flooding. I'm committed to dealing with all of the issues relating to climate change. So I hope that you will vote for me in Newark on December the 12th.